in your book, you talk a little bit about your own kind of personal childhood health challenges, which eventually led you to the great work that you're doing today. Uh, would you mind sharing a little bit about kind of your personal journey of healing and share with all of our listeners what led you to discovering, this more natural approach to health and healing and creating Green Med Info and eventually writing this book?
Sure, I'd love to, Nathan. Thank you. So my health journey began probably pretty early in terms of being a sick infant and having the need for, allopathic interventions to ostensibly save my life because I was diagnosed with bronchial asthma at 6 months. They used to inject me with epinephrine and give me various pharmaceuticals. And ultimately, what happened is I was a pretty sickly, depressed, sad child with a lot of medical trauma. And it wasn't until I went to college, actually, that I started to explore alternative views of health and well-being. And I started to clean out my diet and start, engaging detoxification. And that's when I was amazed. I never needed an inhaler again. Unless, of course, I cheated on my diet, which was primarily dairy-free. To me, cow's milk was really my a thorn in my side, and so that was what brought me to this space. It was really not so much an academic pursuit; it was more of a life-death necessity for me to learn what were the actual causes at a root level of my disease and my ailments. And then, as I went deeper down the rabbit hole, I started to understand that there's this massive body of science that actually documents how, in fact, folkloric medicine and grandma's kitchen cupboard cures are really evidence-based in a way that I never knew about, and that there's huge research on the unintended adverse effects of the conventional standard of care, pharmaceuticals, vaccines, even diagnostic technologies like X-ray mammography, can contribute to cancer. These things just blew my mind. And ultimately, over many years of working with people, helping them also to regain their health through natural approaches, I realized that fundamentally people needed, well, first of all, I needed to scale myself because I would actually spend hours telling people the same thing, like, okay, let's go to the produce case at the health food store and let's talk about how kale and carrots are like the best medicine. And then after hearing myself talk for 10 years, I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way. So that's the birth of social media. 2007 and 8 was when I created Green Med Info and started to index all this research from Medline, which now is about almost 80,000 abstracts across 10,000 health topics that give you the evidence that, many still believe doesn't exist, on how natural medicine is actually extremely powerful and very much based in science. And that's how I came to ultimately do the work that I love to do, and that has unfortunately become very politicized. Right. Because pharma is very much in control when it comes to the media, the government, and we are presently being defined as enemies, even of the state, for simply advocating informed consent. And hey, there's this information out there, so they're like, let's kill the messenger, let's defame the messenger. And that's really what I'm seeing happen to myself and many of my well-respected colleagues.
Well, we've seen that in cancer specifically for decades, right? But now with COVID, like we're seeing it at an all-time high, this censorship, this, trying to eradicate anything other than what the mainstream narrative is based upon, right? And discrediting anybody who is coming out and saying there are natural solutions for your health with this. You don't have to be as afraid as they're telling you, right? And you, being truly one of the leaders in the space, helping to inform and educate people on what they can really do to take back control of their health, have been ostracized, among some of the others, more than anybody. I mean, how has that been for you in knowing that what you're doing is, one, truly serving people's higher good, but then being completely, discredited or falsely discredited by the media? I mean, what's that been like?
Well, yeah, thanks for asking. I mean, really, I've been working through it. And ultimately, like there is this quote about how if you tear out a man's tongue, you're not proving him a liar. You're
Mm,
just proving that you're afraid of what he's saying. And that's what we're seeing with massive deplatforming and cancel culture, where, open debate and, of course, your constitutionally protected freedom of speech is essential more than ever, not just for democratic principles and processes, but obviously for informed consent, which is really a medical ethical principle that if we don't obey, then we're violating basic human rights. Meaning, in order to have informed consent, you need access to the information that clearly shows you both the risks and the benefits. And that's all that really I've ever done is attempt to put out free resource that people can use to access that peer-reviewed published research. And instead of people taking issue with JAMA and Lancet and whatever journal we're basically citing, they instead try to attack the messenger and really try to make an example of him or her so that people are intimidated to not speak out.
mm,
But of course, what we saw in this last election cycle is an active sitting president, whether you love Trump, hate him, or indifferent, was deplatformed, across social media for contradicting a narrative that I feel is worth questioning because you should be able to question things, and ultimately now even questioning the orthodox truth when it comes to medicine and science is considered heretical. And crazily, the Department of Homeland Security just 2 weeks ago released a bulletin saying that any questioning of COVID vaccines being effective, the origin of COVID policies, or election fraud could be associated with domestic terrorism now. So it's like I'm watching this, as I know you are, and I'm just like, is this like a science fiction film that's happening?
right.
I think that people should be standing up to protect everyone's right to free
Yeah.
speech and open dialogue. I do that. I mean, Stand for Health Freedom, the nonprofit that I co-founded, is actually standing up for every American's right to choose whether they want to vaccinate or not. If you're pro-vaccine, you want to vaccinate, we're actually standing up also for your right to choose. It's your parental right and responsibility. That's not an anti-vax advocacy,
Right.
but that's what they're doing is they're throwing that term on minority groups like us, which actually I think there's a sleeping majority that has yet to awaken, who share our values. And then they're saying basically that they are a threat to society, that they're killing people. And that's why Biden said that about me and my wife and actually 11 others, that we kill people by spreading disinformation, when in fact we're kind of doing the opposite, in my opinion.
We hope you enjoyed this short excerpt from the Health and Healing Club. This entire video, including an in-depth discussion and thoughtful and inspiring questions and answers, is available inside the Health and Healing Club, along with hundreds of hours of premium and exclusive life-changing content, practices, and holistic, natural, and integrative solutions for health and healing. You can start your free trial today at healthandhealingclub.com.